with these elections, what do you think? Has the representation increased a bit, or things are still pretty much the same?
I think things are pretty much the same. But having said that, it is important to actually go out and vote. Vote for whichever party you want to vote for. But exercise that right. Be involved. Be engaged. It is important.
Immigration is another big debate. Why do we still have the stereotypes about migrants snatching benefits from the locals? As we see, we talked about this before, what happened in South Africa. It's almost as if, when anything goes wrong with the economy, you blame it on the migrants. But this has become very, very dominant.
In this country, I think a lot of things have been said about immigration, about immigrants that are misleading. Misleading in the sense that the numbers of immigrant people are talking about are people from EU countries. When things go wrong or when the economy is bad, people find fault and people throw blames around. And immigrant will always get some of the blames. Some people, I know one of my neighbors that will tell you he thinks, or with what he sees on telly, he actually thinks that every immigrant in this country are on benefit. Sometimes he asks me, oh, are you working? Yeah, I said, I'm well. Then he will remember, yes, I know you are working. I know you are with the council.
So the stereotypes are still very, very deep.
It is. People, some of the indigenous, they don't even know what is happening. They don't know the figures.
And how can these negative stereotypes about migrants be changed? While it is true, I've always said, granted, that there are issues of where migrants come and claim benefits and engage in illegal practices, but there are a whole lot more people doing great things. So how can this balanced narrative be put out there?
The narrative will start changing when leaders are bold and brave to talk about immigration as a good thing. When leaders are bold to go to the electorate to let them understand that immigrants are not coming to this country just to take benefit.
You're still watching Foreign Dispatches, brought to you from London, and I'm your dispatcher, Doris Okenwa. We've been talking about the UK elections. First of all, we try to capture for you the divergent views from the various communities in London. And then we've also been talking about the participation of black and ethnic minority groups in British politics. Next now, we'll be heading to the Chatham House to meet with Thomas Rains. He's the coordinator of the European program, and he'll be giving us a broader perspective about foreign policy and other issues on the elections.
Well, at the moment, it's important to say that at the outset, foreign policy hasn't played a big role in the election campaign thus far. But at the same time, there is a growing sense that the UK is maybe stepping back from its international role. It's becoming less involved in international issues.
Why is this?
Well, people have put together a pattern of different issues, including the vote in 2013, which blocked the government's proposal for intervention in Syria. They've seen support for the UK Independence Party, which has a more isolationist foreign policy. There's growing Euroscepticism amongst the British public. I think Europe is a particularly difficult political issue because although it's interconnected to immigration, which is a very, very important political topic and one that splits the different parties.
Now, there is some sort of a consensus among the major parties that immigration needs to be checked, needs to be reduced, but they differ in how they should go about it. Some are softer than the others.
Well, immigration is a really hot topic in British politics at present. The parties are responding to what they see as a degree of public concern that immigration levels have been too high. Because the government isn't in a position to put controls or quotas on migration from the EU, means that immigration from elsewhere has really been squeezed, and they've put real pressure on trying to reduce numbers of migrants from other parts of the world because they've not in a position to place the same legislative controls on immigration in the EU.
So there has to be a way of drawing the line between the economic benefits of immigration and the illegal aspects of it.
So there's a very strong economic case in favour of immigration, but some of the issues have been more to do with how immigration has created social and cultural changes which have made some parts of the British public uncomfortable, particularly the rate of change if they felt that it's too fast. I think there is definitely an issue that the debate about immigration has become quite narrow. Sometimes it's based on stereotypes rather than facts, and there are certainly a number of persistent myths about immigration which I think mainstream parties haven't been good enough at challenging.
So let's take a look at some other issues, big issues here. You have the economy, that has to be like the biggest issue, austerity, cuts and all that. Now again, if you look at the various parties, the Conservatives believe we will achieve cuts this way, Labour believes we will achieve it that way. What do you think about this?
Well, I would say the economy is probably the most important issue going into the election, and the Conservatives have tried to run their campaign focused on what they perceive as economic competence. They've developed a political narrative which is focused on the fact that they came to power with the public finances in a very poor situation, and that they've helped to restore growth in the UK after the financial crisis in 2009-10 onwards. Labour, on the other hand, reject that interpretation, but have now come to a point where they accept the need for a number of cuts to try and deal with the deficit. It's interesting because there is an agreement on dealing with the deficit, but a disagreement about how quickly to do that and where to cut and where also to raise additional tax revenue from.
And then jobs is a big issue. People have zero contract hours. You'll explain more about that. And wages need to be dealt with, and it is being talked about. It's featured largely on the debates.
Yeah, and unemployment in some ways has performed relatively well since the economic crash. It's one of the more positive economic stories in Britain over the last few years. So at the moment we have basically the lowest unemployment we've had since before the financial crash. It's around just below 6%. So in that sense it's been a positive story, but certainly some of that has come from a decline in productivity. So workers at work are not as productive or producing as much per hour that they work as they were expected to. There are certainly some specific issues to do with regulation in the workplace. Zero-hour contracts is a prime example. There's 1.8 million people in the country on zero-hours contracts.
Explain that a bit.
A zero-hour contract is when you have a contract with an employer, but you have no guaranteed hours of working. So for example, 1 week you could work 30 hours, and then next week your employer may give you no hours, and you have no guarantee of how many hours you'll work. Obviously, this makes it difficult for people to have a steady income, to plan financially, to pay their rent and other regulated costs that they'll face every single month. Now, the Labour Party would like to limit when those zero contracts can be used, limit the time that they can be used for, whereas the Conservative Party, which in general is more supportive of a flexible labour market, thinks that some people actually benefit from having zero-hours contracts. They think it gives flexibility to workers as well as to employers. So that's an area where the parties are slightly divided.
Housing, it's almost impossible for the average person to find a place to live in a town like London, in a city like London. Exactly.
The prices have got to a point where they're really unaffordable. And in some places, the pressure is particularly bad. London is, in a way, a housing bubble. The price rises have increased much more than inflation. This is an amazing statistic, but if you own the average house in London, you earn more money by owning the house, by the increase in the cost of the house, than you do from the average job. So your house price goes up more than your salary you earn in a year if you have the average house and the average salary. So there are real issues with housing, and basically I think most people agree that the biggest problem is about a lack of supply, so more houses need to be built, more affordable houses need to be built.
On the whole, what does this say about global politics when you look across board? Elections have happened in Nigeria, in Greece. You look across board and you find an understandably disenchanted populace saying, enough, you make promises, you keep it.
In Britain, really, rather than one election, we have 650 small elections in different parts of the country, and those are being contested very closely by different parties in different parts of the country. But it's also part of a wider pattern. You've seen this in other parts of Europe, where parties who are anti-establishment, who are opposed to what they see as political elites and political sort of central political class who have ignored their interests. And you've seen this, for example, with the rise of Marine Le Pen and the National Front in France, with left-wing outsiders too, with Syriza in Greece and Podemos in Spain. So it's slightly a backlash against an establishment which has been seen to be out of touch and not deliver for what some people need.
And that's it for today on Foreign Dispatches. Many thanks for joining us. Do send us your thoughts. Find us on Twitter, send us an email. Let's know what you're seeing around you, what you're thinking, and some of the issues you think we should be focusing on. Until next time, keep well.